On today's show, Pacers sign a player, Trevelin Queen. The report from Shams Charania and The Athletic will break that down. What does it mean? Who the heck is Trevelin Queen? Plus, got to talk one-on-one with Deividas Sirvydis today at practice. We'll play that audio for you and talk about what he said, what it means, and of course, Pacers game day, Pacers-Knicks tonight. You already have a good idea about what the Knicks are from last Friday, but we'll talk about stuff I'm watching for in this game after last Friday's game. Lots to get to on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the Westside Community News. And today, big day, did not expect today to be a big day, but Pacers sign a player. Trevelin Queen in the mix recently with Philly for part of training camp. G League MVP last year, lots to talk about with him, what that means, where the Pacers roster is now, all that ripple effects that come with the signing, and of course, Queen's background and what he can bring to the Pacers this year. Plus, Deividas Sirvydis kind of slid under the radar this summer. I got to talk one-on-one with him for about 2 minutes today at practice. We'll play that audio for you, talk about what he said, him joining the Pacers, his future with the team, things like that. And of course, tonight, Pacers-Knicks. What I'm watching for in that game, 3 things to watch for. Pacers already played the Knicks, so I won't get too detailed on New York since most of you saw that last Friday, and we'll dive right into that today. Hey, today's episode brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users on PrizePicks can get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON, PrizePicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Thanks for joining us here on Locked On Pacers, your team every day. Trevelin Queen to the Pacers, 2-way contract, not official as of me talking. It's about 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday, but Shams Charania of The Athletic reported earlier today the Pacers are signing Trevelin Queen to a 2-way contract. Pacers have that 2-way slot open still. Didn't fill it before camp, opted to have 2 extra spots in camp for flexibility reasons and stuff like that, and boom, they made it happen. And interestingly, today, literally today at practice, we were talking with Rick Carlisle, and he noted that they'll see how the roster shakes out as well. We're going to have to make some decisions on that in the not too distant future. So it sounds like they had some ideas about what was coming on the wing, and it was in response to a question about Aaron Nesmith and who might replace his minutes. And lo and behold, Trevelin Queen is kind of that 2-3 mix, just like Nesmith. So perhaps some foreshadowing was coming there, but boom, Trevelin Queen signed. I've said his name wrong twice now. Signed by the Pacers on a 2-way deal. Fitting timing. He was waived by the Philadelphia 76ers on Sunday, which means he cleared waivers on Tuesday. Pacers will make that official as soon as they can, I'm sure, because they would like to probably get him a chance to play in the preseason, get a tune-up for him, get him some chemistry with his teammates, because on a 2-way, naturally, he won't be spending as much time with the team as he can in general. But here we go. Big thing to highlight as I start talking about Trevelin Queen and the Pacers. He's 6'6". He's 6'6". Can you believe it? The Pacers signed a player that's wing size. He's probably close to Chris Duarte's size in terms of his height, a little on the skinnier side. Basketball Reference lists his weight as only 190 pounds, so I would say he leans more 2-guard than 3, but he can play the 3, which makes him a natural fit for the Pacers team on this 2-way. And him and Kendall Brown on the flanks with the signings is a good fit there. And the standout thing, if you read his resume as a player, is G League MVP last year for the Rio Grande Valley Vipers. That's the Houston Rockets G League affiliate. He actually started with Rio Grande last year and then got promoted to a 2-way midseason, but spent most of his time at the G League level. Ridiculous numbers. In the regular season portion of the G League last year, because they also had the Showcase Cup in the playoffs. In the regular season portion, he averaged 25.3 points, 6.6 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. That's MVP numbers. Similar numbers in the Showcase, and kind of carried Rio Grande for a lot of last season. They had some other guys like Anthony Lamb who got promoted midseason to a 2-way as well. But either way, he was phenomenal for them. And they won the championship. They won the G League title last year. That MVP resume is part of why the Sixers signed him. But then the Sixers, who all of a sudden add Montrezl Harrell, have all these non-guaranteed guys on the back of their roster, kind of ran into a tax and cap crunch, and they have a lot of depth on that team now, and they didn't have room for him in the preseason. He played in their first preseason game, scored 4 points against Brooklyn, but with all the guys they have to make decisions on, he was the first guy out. They even guaranteed him like $330,000 at signing, and they still cut him, right? That's a hefty chunk of change for a team that's going to be flirting with expenses this year. So out he goes, and the Pacers get to benefit. They get a pretty solid player to have on a two-way deal after winning G League MVP last year. Like, just looking back at former G League MVPs, last year it was 2 years ago it was Paul Reed, still an NBA player. Frank Mason, multi-year NBA player the year before that. Chris Boucher the year before that, multi-year NBA player with the Raptors. Lorenzo Brown, multi-year NBA player. Jarnell Stokes, multi-year NBA player. Tim Frazier, multi-year NBA player. So as you can see, generally, G League MVP is a sign of this guy's probably at least on the fringes of NBA level at a minimum, and likely at least a depth piece for NBA teams. And I would say based on Queen's stats last year, Justin Anderson, for example, was first team All-G League, not even MVP. He was clearly NBA quality, I think, for the Pacers. Now, there's 60 new guys in the league for those guys to beat out after the draft, but clearly an NBA quality talent, and the Pacers get him on a two-way, fresh off of playing in preseason with the Sixers. So I think it's a good signing for the contract they got him for. Perfect guy to split time between the Pacers and Mad Ants, because he's sort of still kind of a raw talent, right? He's got these crazy scoring numbers at all the levels, but in the pro level last year, with Houston, 4.3 points, 1.6 rebounds per game. Shot it pretty well. Good splits at the pro level, but in general, he's really athletic and is kind of putting his game all together. Now, the evidence is there that he's already started to do that. He had a 17-point game in the NBA last year when Houston took on Charlotte in Charlotte. So he's there. He's just a little bit on the raw side still, and that's why I think a two-way makes a lot of sense. But very clearly, the Pacers have done this every year where they promote their two-way guys. Last year, they did it twice. Terry Taylor and Dwayne Washington both got it. That's happened in the past before. Poitras got it. Sumner got it. Ben Moore got it. All within months of each other. Some serious promotion potential here. If the Pacers leave their final roster spot open or end up making moves midseason, right? They're ripe to be a trade team, certainly. With vets on a seller's team, they likely will have a non-guaranteed player on the back end of their roster if they have anyone at all. So certainly a candidate for promotion. Him and Kendall Brown will be kind of jostling to see if they can get a full NBA deal as the season progresses, because his resume is very strong for a two-way player. Even at 25 years old, which is on the older side of the younger, air quotes, two-way guys, right? He'll turn 26 during the coming season. Still seems like a talent, and for the position he plays, seems like something the Pacers will and should want. And the scoring wing is kind of an interesting fit. He's kind of this athletic piece, which is, given what the Pacers have been angling for with athleticism, a good fit for what they're building. But he also plays the same position as Aaron Nesmith, who just got hurt. And that's not to say I think he'll jump Nesmith in the rotation or should play over Nesmith at all. I just say that because, with Nesmith currently injured at this moment, it could make some sense for the Pacers to try to kind of squeeze him in for these preseason games, see what they can get out of him as they grow and go forward. So we'll see what ends up being the case when he's able to join the Pacers and stuff like that. But, a scoring wing with some suspect defense, wing-sized in general, I think that's a win for the Pacers on the type of deal they got him on. And we'll see if he can play in the preseason going forward. Two-way spots now filled for the Pacers. That's it. They've got their two, Kendall Brown being one, and, of course, now Trevelin Queen being the other. Having those spots filled, obviously good for the Mad Ants, being good for the Pacers heading into camp to have that flexibility. Deividas Sirvydis was in the mix, so he's probably a loser in this situation, if you can even say that, because he was the only guy on the team that could have had it. And there were all these other Exhibit 10 guys who I'm sure you'll see their names flash across your screen at some point in the near future. But Trevelin Queen now given the Pacers' final two-way slot, and I was kind of wondering if they'd scoop up someone on waivers when they left it open heading into camp, and boom, there we go. I think he's going to put up pretty huge numbers for Fort Wayne this year and will be an interesting candidate to watch this year. So that's it, 19 for the Pacers now. We'll see where their roster progresses, if they make any signings and waivers before the season starts. Speaking of Deividas Sirvydis, who thought he would get two sorts of segment talk today, I got to speak with him one-on-one at practice today. I want to share with you guys what he said, what he talked about, what we spoke about, even if it was just only for 2 minutes. He was one of the few guys I hadn't talked to yet this year, and I was curious what he had to say, how he felt about his spot on the team, why he chose the Pacers, what skills he's working on, all sorts of stuff we got to in 2 minutes. So I'll get to play that for you here on Locked On Pacers. Before we talk about that, though, I would like to really quickly talk to you guys about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the most fun way to do daily fantasy. You make entries on players versus the projections that PrizePicks set. You can pick if they're going to get more or less in a certain stats. It's super easy to play. Their format is great because it's just you versus the computer instead of going against other people who do a ton of research or things like that. Basically, just pick 2 to 5 players. If they will go score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. No competing against other people. It's just you versus their projections. And PrizePicks offers projections on any sport you could watch. NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, you name it. They've likely got it on there. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less, so they're super easy. And they're safe and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states as well as Canada. Go try yourself. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com. Sign up today and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks give you $100. You deposit $50, they give you $50. You get the idea. Don't forget that promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100 at PrizePicks. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, why not hop on over to Locked On Celtics? Hear more about that team as they transition from one head coach to another. John Corrales does a great job breaking down that team and what's going on in the land of Boston. Let's continue on with Pacers news, and today on the Pacers News Front, we're talking about Deividas Sirvydis, a guy you probably haven't thought much about during camp. He's played in both preseason games for the Pacers, and I got to speak with him today. It was the first time I've gotten to speak with him all season, but the reason you're hearing about it, as opposed to every other time we get to do media, this was a one-on-one conversation. And this was, reminder, I need to get this out there because of some of the questions asked. This was pre the Trevelin Queen news being announced by, reported on by Shams Charania earlier today, but I was curious about his thoughts about potentially making this team fighting for a two-way and things like that. And he was one of the only guys we hadn't spoken to this season in a media setting, and that makes me really curious just to speak with him, right? I was intrigued by the way he shot the ball against the Knicks last Friday, right? He hit 2 threes in his late time in the game, played fine enough defense, right? +7 was that bench unit in 6.5 minutes. So just an intriguing player. Did well shooting in the fan jam scrimmage. These are all anecdotal things, but his history suggests he's a good shooter. And so as a wing-sized player who can maybe shoot, I wanted to talk to him, right? And I was curious about how why he picked the Pacers, first of all, amongst many things, how he's fitting in with this team, what he's working on, what his conversations are with the coaching staff. And lucky for you all, the way this, I don't need to explain how media sessions work. It's not worth getting into too much of this stuff, but Halliburton was speaking at the same time, and I requested Deividas, so I got to speak to him one-on-one. And without getting into too much journalism background stuff, I'm not going to air an interview where a player's talking to a bunch of people and get a bunch of other people's quotes for their stories into the show. But when it's just me, and my story is already going to be posted by the time this is up on Deividas, hey, I can throw it in here. So, I feel good about throwing this in. You get 2 minutes of me interviewing Deividas Sirvydis today after practice. So here we go. Hear what Deividas Sirvydis had to say about being with the Pacers so far. What's this first couple of weeks been like for you with a new franchise after spending your first 2 years in Detroit?
It was great. Just meeting new people, new system. Everything is different, kind of. But I'm glad I had a chance to be here, and everything feels great.
What made the Pacers the right fit for you in free agency this year? It was your first time, really, as an unrestricted free agent in this league.
Yeah, so, I had a solid summer league, so probably, that was the reason I'm here. But, as I said before, I'm glad to be here, and it feels good.
Where do you feel like you fit in well with this team, with your skill set and your background as you transition to a new franchise?
Probably the three-point shooting. That's what I do best, and, just wait for my opportunity to shoot. And of course, defensive activity, and just spacing on a offensive end, but mostly shooting.
Did it feel good to be included in the 3-point contest in Fan Jam for that?
Oh yeah, I was fun. I didn't expect that at all, but someone just called me. I was okay. It was fun.
What have you felt like you've done well in these 2 preseason games you've played in so far?
I believe I took advantage of my minutes, especially last game in New York, I had I believe 7 minutes. Had some opportunities on offensive end, hit 2 threes. Defensively I believe was also solid. So yeah, just gotta keep it up and just take advantage of the minutes.
What kind of stuff has Rick and the coaching staff been telling you to work on through this camp so far?
We're just talking about everything basically, but the most important thing is defense. So all teams need it, and we're working on individually, defensively, team defense. So yeah, and other than that, just keep improving us skill set.
How appealing was this situation for you, knowing that there are open roster spots and open two-way spots for you to maybe make this team going into the season?
Yeah, that's a lot of motivation. I want to be in the league one way or another, so I'm doing everything to be there.
Always good to hear from players, hear their perspective, what it could mean for how they kind of attack things every day and fit in with the franchise. And again, for a guy that not much is known about him, I was curious to hear about this. At the time, I thought pre-Trevelin Queen signing that he had the inside track on their open two-way slot. And even, I don't think he'll get the final roster spot. I feel like Langston Galloway or James Johnson as a vet makes more sense. But for a team leaning young, if they wanted to have another wing in the fold, why not go with a guy who's played with you during camp? And they signed him in August. They clearly had interest in him pretty early on, at least compared to some other guys in this kind of late roster filling out process. So I was curious how this marriage came to be, what he's thinking of the team and things like that. And I thought it was fascinating that the Summer League thing was a big thing that he thought the Pacers had interest in him from. I get a lot of questions about who's playing well in Summer League from the non-Pacers perspective. And it can be hard to keep up with every team because they all play at the same time out there in Vegas, and the time difference makes it impossible to watch every game. But this is the second year in a row where someone who performed well on a different team's Summer League squad, the Pacers had eyes on them and scooped them up at some point after Summer League, right? Sirvydis was playing for the Pelicans, shot well from deep, had some big games for New Orleans out there, and they scooped him up. DeJon Jarreau last year had some great defensive moments for the Miami Heat Summer League squad. Pacers scooped him up, right? It's just something they do pretty well, and I think every franchise tries to do this well, right? But they've had some success getting guys into their ecosystem who they identified from a good Summer League performance. And Sirvydis, of course, has a history being that top 40 pick, having that experience with Detroit, being a good shooter at that level. And I thought it was noteworthy that he himself called that out as his skill, that the Pacers had the intrigue in the shooting, right? We've heard that from the front office, from Rick Carlisle for a while, that they view shooting and athleticism as two important skills, and Sirvydis certainly has the shooting part down. Now, he's got a lot of work to do in other areas, and I think he called out the big one defensively, right? He's got the shooting touch, and he's got the size, but he does not have the brawn to defend a lot of these more powerful guys. So, yeah, he defended fine against the Knicks, but I think that's something he's got to do better in general. As he grows, the G League could be good for him there. If he makes the NBA team, it could be good for him there. But I thought it was noteworthy that he assessed his own defense in that New York game, right? That's something he clearly is thinking about beyond his own play as a player. It's like, yeah, I think I defended well in that game. And I think that will be the stuff to watch for him in these last two preseason games, and if he sticks with the Pacers during the season, how his defense grows, because that's sort of the big question mark for him. I always talk about this with wings. If you can shoot or defend, you're probably tired of hearing this if you listen to the show a lot. If you can shoot or defend, I think you have a role in the NBA. Just one. If you can do both, you have a significant role in the NBA. But if you can do just one, you probably got a role in the NBA. And I think he can shoot. So if he can add the defensive level, he could probably be on an NBA roster. But currently the defense isn't there, and the shot is good, but it's just rickety enough to be shy of get this guy on a team no matter what. So I think he could be a guy who's he seems like a good two-way fit on a lot of teams, but the Pacers have already filled both of those spots. It's possible they still have some finagling to do, like they could promote Queen to their 15th guy. I'm not saying they will do any of these things. These are just theoretically allowable moves. If they wanted to get Sirvydis on a two-way, for example, or something like that, or Kendall Brown even there. I don't think that will happen. I think they're locked in there, but I think it's interesting that Sirvydis wants to do anything to make it, and improving the defense is that next step for him as he tries to be a guy that makes this team as a wing, and defense will be a big thing for him, right? They have some wings in the mix, but not really. It's mostly just guys who are kind of guards and kind of wings, but now that Queen's in the mix, my prediction for Sirvydis will be, now that he gets cut, there's a reason the Pacers traded for his G League rights. It just makes sense that he would end up with Fort Wayne. But again, we've seen these promotions happen every year, whether it's Justin Anderson last year or Trey McKinney-Jones, Stephon Hicks. You could go on and on about these guys getting, Shea Brissett even, guys getting 10 days who play well for Fort Wayne or who have some history with the franchise. It seems like Sirvydis could be in the mix. So I don't think he'll start out with a permanent deal from the Pacers. I think he would have had a better chance before Trevelin Queen got signed by the Pacers earlier today. But certainly a guy to keep your eyes on if he continues to shoot well. I think that's going to be the key skill for him that could land him at the pro level. And if he can get better on defense, then he probably should be getting some sort of chance. He's still young. Remember, only a 2-year pro in his younger 20s. So we'll see where he goes. But I'm always happy to air audio for you guys so you can hear from the players directly when I have the opportunity. In this case, it just worked out very well. Hey, the Pacers play a game tonight. Speaking of how Sirvydis has played in games, let's talk about the Knicks. Pacers-Knicks tonight. Pacers' third preseason game, and finally, their first home preseason game. New Gainbridge Fieldhouse as Pacers take on the Knicks at home. It's preseason for everybody. Journalists, announcers, in-stadium workers, Pacers, sports entertainment workers. It's always fun to see everybody getting back up to speed. But I want to talk Pacers-Knicks, the three things I'll be watching for in that game, especially because it's an adjustments game. The Pacers get to adjust against the same opponent, which I think is a cool thing to see in the preseason as they sort of develop and continue to grow. Before we talk about that, though, I want to talk to you guys about Acre Pro. When it comes to land sales, it pays to have experts in your corner, and Acre Pro Midwest Farm Group are your local farmland specialists. With decades of experience in Indiana agriculture, no one knows the market better. Whether you're doing a 1031 exchange, expanding your operation, selling a row crop farm, whatever you're doing, your local Acre Pro agent will walk the land with you and ensure the deal is done right. Great service is just the beginning. Acre Pro provides unparalleled land data, soil ratings, elevation, flood zones, and land valuation across parcels so that you get the full picture up front and can be confident in the entire land market. Your agent will cater to each of your individual needs and help you navigate the complexities of buying and selling land so the process is made simple. You can experience the ease of Acre Pro by working with farmland specialists like Kyle Rule, Brady Hammond, Neil Herr, and Kyle Spray. Visit acrepro.com or call 765-587-3185 and talk to your local land expert today. Again, that's 765-587-3185. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, hop on over to Locked On Knicks. Hear the opponent's side of the story as they head in to Indiana for battle number 2 with the Pacers. First game, Knicks dominated 131 points. That is a big thing to watch in this game. The adjustments from game to game. How can the Pacers improve on a 17-point loss? It's preseason. The deepest of bench players are playing in these games. The result doesn't truly matter, but the team would obviously like to improve every single day if they can. And this game is no different. So what am I going to be watching for in this game? First of all, this is not something I expected to make this list, but it's now first. I'll open with it. Who replaces Aaron Nesmith in the rotation, right? Who knows how long he'll miss into the season, if at all, right? Rick Carlisle said perhaps he could be ready by the start of the season. We'll see what ends up happening there. But Nesmith's not going to play, right? He's got the plantar fascia issue in his foot. Wasn't able to play in Fan Jam and won't be playing likely for the rest of the preseason. If I had to predict, he only played 9 minutes in their first game, but he played in the first half, which was when the rotation was normal. And so I wasn't sure in the second half when he wasn't playing if it was just that they, were going to the deep bench guys. Usually when someone like Kendall Brown subs in or Andrew Nembhard, I've been taking notes about the sub patterns, but once one of those guys comes in, I just stop because then it becomes the point of the game where it's more about evaluation than the rotation. But now it matters a little bit more. Who's going to be the reserve 3? Because that tells you a lot about the Pacers hierarchy, what position they feel like guys can play. We can learn a lot from what ultimately ends up happening there. First thing we learned at practice today from Rick is that Kendall Brown's been kind of that second unit 3 so far. That surprised me. I perked up a little bit at that. Not because I don't think he's deserving of an opportunity. I just thought Brissett made more sense. Myself, I'm beating a dead horse talking about him so much as a rotation player. Or even making Benedict Mathurin your reserve 3 and then going with like TJ McConnell, Langston Galloway as your 1-2 if they're going to continue sort of the same style they have with some more aggressive guard dashing, not defense. But I get why you want to get the rookie in there in preseason, and Kendall Brown's got the size and the athleticism to sort of play the way they want. I think it's a good trial and opportunity for him if he's going to be the guy in the rotation at that 3 spot, but it could be a lot of guys. Maybe it's Trevelin Queen if they could, I keep saying it wrong. Trevelin Queen if they can sign him in time. Maybe it's Brissett if he plays a position down. They have a lot of options, but who they fill it with will be telling for how we know the hierarchy, how they can tweak, and Rick Carlisle is good at getting creative in these instances. although it is preseason. It's not like a huge deal necessarily, but we'll learn a lot about the pecking order and the priorities at that position with that second unit. And also, how does it impact them defensively to not have Nesmith out there? Can they do well? I mean, he defended pretty well in both games he played in. Can they continue to get by with the sort of wing guard hybrid defender that's done well in 2 preseason games, not out there? These will be things I've got my eyes on pretty closely in this game. Number 2, speaking of defense, this is the big one. How can they improve defensively, right? I don't have to, you don't have to watch a lot of NBA to look at the Knicks scoring 131 in the last game and go, oh, that's way too much, right? And I think the Pacers know that, and 9 free throw attempts for Brunson, 7 for Randall, right? RJ Barrett tears them up. They just couldn't keep guys in front of them. And there were a lot of other issues, but I think that'll be big, is how can they improve in that area? Are they better at helping if they get beat by those guys? Because those are good players, right? They're going to beat you every so often. So are their rotations better on the defensive end? Are they better at face guarding all night? Do they score more so they're in their set defense more? There's a lot of factors at play, but can they be better defending the Knicks studs? Not that I put Knicks studs when I was typing. I'm realizing now that people will go, those guys aren't studs. Studs on the Knicks, not necessarily comparative to the league, although those guys are very good players, right? Julius Randle made All-NBA 2 years ago. And part of that defense is, can they force more turnovers, right? Only 9 turnovers for New York last Friday. And I know that that's a very basic and obvious stat. Like, that's a good way to score. That's generally a good representation of high-pressure defense. But really, for the Pacers, who have said, our identity is going to be this team that's good in transition potentially, and our brilliant point guard can see all the lanes and make these plays. Okay, that's all great, but you have to get stops and force turnovers to get into transition with a team like that. And so forcing more turnovers naturally allows them to play to their strengths. Can they do it more than they did last time? Because the Knicks are the best team they'll play in the preseason, right? So if they improve in that way, that will look good. And where can they generally look better on defense, right? Can they be more or similarly on a string to what they were in Charlotte? And they look better defending at the rim? Can they defend more without fouling? These general improvements are not only good for a young team trying to improve as they get better, of course, but also for a team that, for a lot of these guys, they've never done NBA film sessions. They have multiple rookies on this team. For a lot of guys, it's their first time doing film with Rick Carlisle. For a lot of guys, it's their first time with this specific group. How responsive are they to the things that are said in film sessions, and how can it help them grow on the defensive end? That's thing number 2 that I'm watching. And the final thing, the big story for me all season in general, can Halliburton be that dude again? And I don't mean that dude because his stat line was ridiculous, although 20-7 is a good game, even if you play the whole game instead of just 24 minutes. But when he checked out, I may be talking about this too much as well, but I think this is a very big deal. He was leading the team in shots, and that is not something that Tyrese Halliburton is known for. That level of aggression, being that guy looking for his shot while still doing well setting up his teammates. And I know that's a hard balance to strike, but I think he's got to do it if he wants to become the player that he's been talked about to be. And I think he can. I think he's very talented at reading the game and bending defenses and even breaking defenses with his handle and shooting abilities. Can he do it again? And it's not even that there's a lot that goes into that. The Pacers' game plan, his specific mindset, how the Knicks guard him. But anything that changes, whether it's a game plan change, whether the Knicks send a little bit more pressure his way, whether he's thinking a little differently when the game starts because of his own thinking or something the Pacers tell him to do, all these things I'll be curious about is if the game looks a little different, can he still have that kind of game against a different kind of defense or a team changing the way they cover him? The adjustments matter on the micro level for him because he had a very good game against the Knicks last time. So I'll be curious how he looks in that setting. And if not, if he's not super aggressive or he's not their lead shot taker, but he's still a good passer, is that 1, good or bad? And 2, is it by design, right? Is it obvious that he is looking to get his teammates going or their offense is clicking very well? There's no point of him being aggressive, If his game looks different, why, and is that better for the team? Just general stuff with him that I will likely be watching a lot of this season. I have a lot of psycho tabs of things I track for the Pacers, and I think one of them this year is going to be the Pacers' offensive output versus Halliburton assists and Halliburton shot attempts on a scatter plot, just because I think that will be telling for, in general, the correlation between those things and how good he's playing and how he's sort of reading the game. So I'll be looking forward to this game. We'll, of course, be breaking it down tomorrow on Locked On Pacers, plus a little sidebar of a big moment from the game. It is their first home preseason game. And I think tomorrow we'll talk roster battle a little bit. Haven't gotten into that. Have been wanting to. But between James Johnson, Langston Galloway, and Deividas Sirvydis, now that Trevelin Queen is signed, what's going to happen with the Pacers' last roster spot? Will they even use it? They still have an open roster spot to, make a trade, bring in some salary, get a little closer to the floor. before the season starts. Talk about all that tomorrow after the game. And then Friday, Rockets in town. We'll talk a little Pacers-Rockets and some other big preseason topics as they wrap up preseason play on Friday. You won't want to miss any of that. And it's all here on Locked On Pacers, where you can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Pacers and me at TEastNBA. We're free and available on all platforms and on YouTube, where you can see my lovely face every single day. I don't actually think it's lovely, but it's a fun anecdote to say. Thank you guys a ton for listening. If you made it this far, it is very, very much appreciated. Talk to you tomorrow after Pacers-Knicks.